Case number 12 CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys, and the prosecutors are present as well. Mr. King?
Judge, can we, I was just going to inquire as to how much longer counsel may have, only because we need to get Dr. Gurr on a plane by the end of business tomorrow, due to a lot of other obligations she had. And I didn't anticipate he would be more than 8 hours of cross-examination. She is here all day tomorrow, but I was just wondering if we should ask the jury if they could stay a little late this afternoon, if Mr. Brockler is going to be much longer.
What time is our flight tomorrow?
Hold on.
May I answer?
Yes.
So my flight is the 6:30, and the obligation is a family obligation. My son is the first child born, a boy, and with Jewish law, we have a bris. And we have a family that flew from Israel for that. And as a grandma, I'd like to be there.
Okay. All right, so we have today and tomorrow, then most of tomorrow. All right. Yes. Mr. Brockler, are you anticipating that that'll be enough time today and most of tomorrow?
It's hard to play Karnak on this one, Judge. I will tell the court, by my count, I think I've been able to do about 4.5 hours of purported cross-examination. I have some left. I'd like to be done before the end of today, but as the court knows, that is not entirely up to me.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll do the best we can. If Mr. Brockler gets done by the end of today, then Mr. King, you can do your redirect tomorrow, and then any recross can take place tomorrow as well.
Yes, if he's going to be done by the close of business today, I think we're going to be fine.
Well, yeah, we should be. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Welcome back, folks. Dr. Gurr, I remind you that you're still under oath. Mr. Brockler, you may proceed with the rest of your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Gurr, I'd like to do a little bit of finishing up, and I'll do it in a different way, and maybe that'll speed things up. You did not, in your report, include the use of the term evil, either in your notes or your report. Is that fair?
I believe I didn't.
Did not, correct?
Yeah.
And you also did not use the phrases justice or injustice in your report or your notes. You agree with that?
But objection, relevance, Judge, as to putting
Overruled.
random words in a report.
Overruled. I'll give you a chance to redirect on that, Mr. King. Overruled.
Agreed.
Yes,
You did not use the phrase serial murder or serial killing in your notes or your report.
Same objection.
Same ruling.
Go ahead.
yes,
And you did not use the phrase mass murder or mass murderer in your report or your notes, correct?
yes,
Those are all phrases that appear more than once in the notebook. You'd agree with that?
yes,
You'd also agree that nowhere in the notebook is there any reference to a shadow, and I just used air quotes for that. You'd agree with that?
yes,
Now I want to do a little bit of, I'm going to call it a lightning round, Doctor, and what I want to do is I want to go through things that I cannot tell from your report or notes if you covered before you opined in June of 2013 that the defendant was insane and schizophrenic. And what I want you to do is, as best you can, and I want you to be accurate, so take whatever time you need, is I want you to tell me either no, I didn't inquire about that, or yes, I inquired about it, but I didn't put it in my notes or my report, or I think it's in there. Something like that, okay?
yes,
Is that fair?
yes,
First thing, the defendant researching making bombs,
inquired,
but not in your notes or your report.
correct,
The way he set up his apartment to explode, catch on fire, whatever term you want,
inquired, not in the report,
and not in the notes.
correct. I think the word, just one second,
Sure.
just to look at the date.
Go right ahead. And I'm talking
Okay.
again about your June of 2013
Yes.
report, not the stuff you did right before jury selection.
Judge, I'm going to object to that characterization. Right before jury selection. It's irrelevant.
All right, sustained.
Correct, it's after, it's my notes after the report.
So you did not inquire about it before you issued your opinion about his sanity and schizophrenia.
I inquired, but it is not in my notes on the report.
You didn't document it.
I
Correct.
did not document, correct.
His efforts to gather intelligence on which theaters would be best for him killing the most people.
Inquired, not in my notes of the report up to June.
Why he chose the individual weapons that he chose.
Inquired, not in the report.
Why he chose the specific body armor that he chose.
Discussed, but not in the report.
Or your notes.
Or my notes, correct.
Texts with Hillary Allen.
Asked and answered.
I think that has been asked and answered, so I'll sustain the objection.
The selfies that he took. Do you know what I mean by selfies? Forgive me. The pictures he took
Yeah,
of him.
I know what is selfie.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to have it explained to me, so. You did not inquire about that before you issued your opinion, or you inquired about it, but just didn't document any of that in your report or your notes.
Just one second, because I put the times for myself
Okay.
on the pictures and I'm looking. Just one second. Please bear with me for 1 minute.
Yes, doctor.
I want to check.
Yes, doctor.
I don't think it's documented for looking at it briefly.
Now, does that
before.
mean that you didn't ask him about it, or you did, but you just didn't document it?
I did and did not document.
Now, do you know what he was going to do with those selfies, doctor?
I know I even wrote the words for it, but to show the selfies, so that other can see the ease of obtaining weapons. The selfies were with weapon, with him with weapons.
You document that in a much later interview with him, but you don't have any documentation of that from before you issued your opinion on sanity?
I have no documentation, but I discussed it. Most of the things I discussed it with him more than once.
Was he going to upload it to the New York Times?
Yes,
Okay, and that's not documented anywhere?
correct.
How about an exploration with him about what he was going to do with squarespace.com underscore classic Jimbo?
Not documented
But you did talk to him about it.
briefly.
There's nothing in any of your notes or your report finding him insane and schizophrenic about the phone call that he made to CU Health right before he went into the theater to start shooting people. Correct?
Not in the report, but discussed.
And not in the notes.
Not in the notes, correct.
And not testified to yesterday. Right.
I don't recall, but if you checked, I take your word for it.
There's nothing in your notes or your report about how he felt shooting a 6-year-old girl 4 times.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
No,
Doctor?
not.
Now, no, as in, I talked to him about killing a girl and what he thought about it, but it didn't make it into my notes in my report? Or I didn't bring it up with him before June of 2013?
I did talk to him before, and this was part of him getting emotional. I think it is about discussing killing the families, but I did not go into children. Also, I did not go into the children specifically.
So you didn't go into it with him, or you didn't go into it specifically in your report or your notes?
In the reports on the notes.
But you recall now going through with him, killing a child.
Yes.
How about the black contact lenses he purchased?
Not in my notes.
But you definitely went through
I
with him.
spoke to him, yes.
And it's not in your report either, right?
Correct.
How about why he shot at people trying to flee the theater? Well, first off, let me ask you, did he shoot at people trying to flee the theater?
He did.
Yeah, and these are the people that he thought he was doing a favor for, correct? Correct?
Part of the time, the way he expressed it, yes.
And the way he talked to you about it was that he thought they all believed the way he did, right?
Correct.
Did he tell you, or did you inquire with him, why are people fleeing from you from this favor, and why are you shooting at them to keep them from fleeing?
I raised it, but there was no specific details or response for him for why he continued shooting. He shot as long as he could.
And I'm not talking about the length of the shooting. I'm talking about him specifically targeting people who were trying to get away. Did you talk to him about that?
Yes, but there was no specific answer. It was part of the mission of killing people in the theater.
Not documented anywhere, right?
Why he went to the theater to kill people?
No, Doctor, why he targeted people trying to get away from him?
Correct.
Why he needed tear gas? Did you explore that with him?
Yeah, he didn't use the tear gas, I think.
He did not use the tear gas. That's your recollection?
I'm trying to remember if he used it before, at the beginning, but he purchased the tear gas in order as part of completing his mission, to achieve his mission.
What was the tear gas for?
For the people, I believe, but I don't remember the details of that.
When you talked to him about why he purchased the tear gas, and you said for the people, what did he tell you that meant? For why would he need it for the people?
In order to, I don't remember his words, but I think that the essence of it was that it was a way of, he didn't use the word overwhelming or what, but in order part of his attacking the people.
Did he tell you why he thought they might want to overwhelm him when he was doing something for them that they agreed with?
No,
And none of that is documented anywhere in any of your notes or reports, correct?
correct,
And not just before June of 2013, but ever, correct?
correct.
How often he went to the range?
Yeah, I know. I checked out when he went to the range. He went to the range about 5 times.
No, but again, is that in your report or your notes?
No,
Did
it's
you
in.
just- Go ahead.
It's not in the report or the notes, but I know that he went and I did not put it there,
Did you
like I did not put other items.
I am so sorry, Doctor. Did you discuss that with him?
Yes,
How about his need for steel penetrator rounds, bullets? Did you discuss that with him?
Object to need.
Rephrase the question.
Doctor, did you discuss with him why he purchased specifically steel penetrator rounds?
I asked him about each type of ammunition that he got, and I don't recall, the details of what he said, but it was in order to kill people.
But not specifically why steel penetrator rounds versus just regular ball ammunition?
Correct,
And you didn't document that anywhere?
correct.
And not just in the June 2013 report or prior notes, but anywhere ever?
Correct.
You did not discuss with him prior to 2013 his thought process of going through the airport as a potential venue for mass murder?
I did.
Not documented, fair?
I'm not sure if I think it is documented, but I'm not sure that it is before my report. But I did discuss with him the airport and why he ruled out the airport and selected a theater. He didn't think he'll be able to get on a plane with this amount of weapons, but why he selected the theater.
So that I'm clear, you recall at some point, sometime, you having a discussion with the defendant about whether he'd be able to get onto an airplane with these weapons and this armor?
If he will be able to get to an airplane, initially his plan was, his thoughts were that what can bring the world to an end might be more of a nuclear effort, like the world will come by bombing it all, but this is not something that is realistic.
And that's why he didn't pursue the airport?
Yes.
Okay. That's not documented, as best you can recall, in any of your notes or the report of June 2013?
I didn't check, but if you say so, I believe it's not.
Okay. And I think we've gone through this a little bit with the fleeing part of it, but I wanted to ask you, prior to the June 2013 opinion on sanity and schizophrenia, did you go through with him any alterations he made to any of the equipment he purchased and why he made those alterations?
I did not.
Now, again, I want to be clear. Is that I went through it with him, but it's not in my report, or that is an area I did not explore with him?
I did not go into the alteration step by step, the way I went into purchasing and when did he purchase and reviewed the pictures in the store where he purchased and the orders where he purchased. I did not go into the upgrade of weapons with.
And I don't mean upgrade of weapons. I mean, did you go through with him why he took black tape and placed it on the inside of the gas mask to make him less visible through the gas mask?
Objection, misstatement of the evidence.
Rephrase the question without the last part.
Yes, Judge, thank you. Did you go through with him why he took black tape and lined it inside the gas mask through the parts that would otherwise be visible?
He did want to be less visible, and he wanted to be able to see less.
Of what he was doing,
Yes.
which he believed was right.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Go ahead. Correct?
Can you say it again?
Yeah, he didn't want, according to what you're telling us, he didn't want to be able to see the stuff he was doing, even though he thought what he was doing was right.
He wasn't consider.
Statement of the evidence.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
He wasn't considering right or wrong.
I want to go through with you. Oh yeah, I forgot. I left out a couple of things. One of the other things that you didn't go through in your notes or your report is the cell phone stun gun. Correct?
Correct.
Now, did you have a conversation with him about it?
Briefly, not much detail, just knowing that he had it.
Why did he get it? What did he tell you?
I do not recall the details.
Something else that does not appear in your report or your notes is a discussion of the different attempts at interaction with people after he broke up with Gargi Dada. Do you agree with that? Here, let me be specific.
Yes.
Match.com. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, Match.com was something he signed up for in April of 2012. You agree?
Yes.
And he did it because, not withdrawing from society, he was looking to find relationships, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you explored that with him?
Yes.
It's not anywhere in your notes or your report. Do you agree?
Yes.
In any notes or any report?
Correct.
Ever, correct?
Correct.
Now, not just Match.com, but he also goes a little bit farther and goes into AdultFriendFinder.com. Do you agree?
Yes.
Now, did you sit down and go through with him the different postings that he put that we've entered into evidence with him?
Maybe not all of them, but I've questioned him about pornography, viewing pornography from well before the crime, and doing it after the relationship with Gargi was over.
And again, first off, none of that's documented either. You'd agree with that? You're right. What you just said, none of that's documented.
I'm not sure. I'll have to check, but I did discuss it with him.
But this is different. I'm not asking you about pornography. I don't care about pornography. What I'm asking you about is a guy that you've described as withdrawing from society, continuing to reach out to develop relationships. That's what I'm asking you. So, you agree that he started Match.com to reach out for relationships, correct?
He posted on that.
Yes, and he set up a profile in order to get relationships. You'd agree?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
And you said you talked to him about it, doctor. Is that what he told you?
That he posted for it, yes,
Yeah.
to have relationships.
And
But
that go ahead, doctor.
he
Sorry.
does it posting for having relationship and actually developing relationship is a little bit different, especially for him who had difficulty with relationship. Did he desire, did he want to meet somebody to replace Gargi? Yes, he did. It occurred to him. And one of the things that I reported, I believe yesterday, was that if he goes out, what he misses, what he would have liked to do is play computer games and develop a relationship because it's novel. But, so that's how I saw it.
I understand. My point is this, is that you testified that this is a guy who is withdrawing from society. Remember?
Yes.
These are efforts that he's making to try to stay engaged with society. You'd agree with that, correct?
To some extent, yes.
Yeah. And so we have Match.com, yes? AdultFriendFinder.com, correct?
Yes.
What other ones?
I don't recall the names. If you say them, I might recognize.
Well, I want to ask you if you would have considered all of the different efforts he made to reach out, even through the internet, to develop social relationships. Would you have considered those?
Yes.
And you would agree that any reasonable mental health professional in your position that's trying to evaluate his mental health would have considered his efforts to develop social relationships even after April of 2012, right? You would have considered that, right?
Within the general picture, yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be reasonable for a professional to do that, right?
Yeah,
And other experts like you would have considered that too, correct?
they might.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Ma'am, Doctor, I'm handing you what I've marked here as, and that's not true. It has been marked as People's Exhibit 1260 and 1261. Take a look at those. Do you recognize them?
I think that I've seen it briefly, but I can't tell you that this is exactly the one I've seen.
Now, what 1260 and 1261 are part of evidence that you were provided, part of discovery you were provided about Gmail accounts that were set up by the defendant, correct?
Correct.
Objection calls for speculation.
Again, you're asking based on what he said to her.
I'm sorry?
You're asking based on what the defendant said to her.
Yes. Yes, Judge.
Is that how you understood the question, ma'am?
No.
Okay. I'll repeat the question.
Well, let me back up a little bit then.
Yes.
Doctor, you, in reviewing your 100,000 pages of discovery that you testified to, you came across these documents, correct?
I've seen it briefly, but I'm saying that I can't recall that this is exactly the pictures that I've seen. There were pictures of people.
And I'm
Yeah.
less concerned with the pictures than with what they are. And what I mean by that is, do you agree that these are...
Objection, Judge, to any testimony about what's on the exhibit before the exhibit's admitted.
These are not admitted yet?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, sustained.
Based on what you see there, are these items similar to what we discussed with Match.com and AdultFriendFinder.com in terms of efforts by the defendant, as you know from speaking with him, of his efforts
Same
to develop...
objection, Your Honor.
Hold on, let him finish his question. Go ahead, finish your question.
his efforts to develop social relationships through the internet. Do you agree with that?
Objection, same objection. Just asking for interpretation of what's in the exhibit. The exhibit's not been admitted.
I'll sustain the objection. You can ask a different question.
Ma'am, you said you've seen these before. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And you said these are the kinds of things that would reasonably be considered by an expert in trying to determine if someone was developing social relationships, correct?
Objection, that's a misstatement of the testimony.
Sustain.
Are these things that would reasonably be considered by an expert trying to determine if someone was developing social relationships?
Objection as to that purpose beyond the scope of this witness's expertise.
Overruled.
Go ahead, doctor.
So repeat the question.
These are the types of things that an expert in your position would reasonably consider in trying to determine if someone they were evaluating was making efforts to develop social relationships through the internet.
The reason that I'm thinking is that putting in within the context of his state of mind as I evaluated him, this was an effort to cling to normalcy, to do something, rather than somebody who was ready to go out and enjoy and meet people. I mean, people do things, but there's beyond that. There was nothing else that was propelling him to be engaged. He posted it, he tried, but I did not attribute this level of significance to it within the general picture, total picture of him continuing to go to the gym and maintaining some activities and trying to maintain some aspects of his life. I do not consider a person who posts as somebody who is a socially appropriate and engaged and capable in initiating and maintaining relationship. So if you ask me if I see that somebody posts, do I think that this person is, yeah, I mean it might, but within the total picture, I think that this is something that is relatively small.
You would agree that someone's efforts to set up accounts with different relationship building websites like you see in front of you.
Yes.
Objection,
those
Your
are-
Honor. We're talking about the exhibit that has not been admitted.
Overruled. I think she testified about what she was seeing in there and these being postings a moment ago. So the objection now is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. You would agree that someone's efforts at setting up these memberships with these relationship developing websites is relevant to an analysis of whether or not they are withdrawing from society. You'd agree with that?
To a limited way.
Yeah, and you actually took those and you asked the defendant about, why are you doing this? Did you ask him that?
I did not take the pictures and show the defendant and ask him what he's doing. No.
You confronted him, though, in general with, hey, you're on 4 or 5 different relationship building websites. What were you hoping to accomplish?
Objection to the characterization of relationship building websites.
Overruled?
Go ahead.
I do not confront people that I interview. I ask them questions, I probe. I'm not an investigator and I'm not a prosecutor. I try to obtain the information to the best of my ability and put it within a context. I did explore with them the component that you are raising and discussing, but I did not check how many websites have you subscribed to and what were you hoping to achieve, and did you put naked women in the website or you didn't put naked women in the look at pictures of naked women in the website. I did not consider that this level of details will provide me with information that will reflect overall of his state of mind at that time.
Let me ask then, Doctor, what did you ask him about regarding these memberships and these websites?
In the context of him describing the difficulties that he was encountering both in school and the termination of his relationship, and how he was spending more time by himself, and he wanted clinging to maintaining more normalcy by continuing activities, paying bills. I did discuss with him other relationships that he might be forming. Why did stopping the relationship with Gargi was so devastating for him? And he did say, I asked him about posting. This was in that context. Posting for potentially looking for new relationships.
And he told you that he was?
That he did post. Yeah.
In multiple websites?
Yeah,
correct?
But I did not count the websites.
And then one of the other thing, by the way, none of that appears in any of your notes or reports, correct?
Correct.
But you did it.
Yes.
Right? There's also, do you remember he posts prior to his going to the theater and engaging in that shooting, he posts his, I don't know what the right term is, do you know what I mean, but like a caption, or he changes his banner or his saying or his slogan. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure.
Does he change anything on his website prior to going to the theater to shoot people that says, will you visit me in prison?
Objection to mischaracterization of the evidence. His website?
So why don't you rephrase the question?
Forgive me. Did you understand, Doctor, that when I said website, I meant his profile on these various websites? Did you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. He says on these different profiles that he posts, "Will you visit me in prison?"
Yes.
Again, part of our now much subdued lightning round. Did you ask him about that?
Yes, I did.
And that too appears nowhere.
Correct.
Did you explore with him the fact that to join these different websites where he can make these profiles and join these, have these memberships, that he created an email account separate from the one that he uses with his family and to make purchases for this crime?
I do not remember.
That would be relevant, wouldn't it?
It might, but I do not remember.
Okay, so you might have gone through it with him, you might not have.
No, I do not remember that I went
Okay.
with that through him. We went over the website, but I do not remember. I don't
Okay.
remember the details.
Okay. Bless you. And so you then write this report, June 17th, 2013, and you say, hey, based on what I've seen, whether it's in the report or the notes or not, based on what I've seen, what I've uncovered, you say the defendant is schizophrenic and he was insane, correct?
Correct.
Then you don't meet with him again until November of 2013, correct?
Correct.
And in that particular meeting, just to put it in context of the calendar, that meeting doesn't take place until after Dr. Jeffrey Metzner conducts his sanity evaluation and issues his report, correct?
Please bear with me for a minute.
Sure.
I'm checking. Yeah, Metzner is in September, in September the 3rd, 2013.
Right. And so you were able to review that 120-page plus report before you came out and talked with the defendant again in November of 2013?
I went through it.
Yep. Then you came out in November of 2013, and the notes you've provided for that are about a page and a half, page and two-thirds. Would you agree?
Correct.
And you don't generate a report after that.
Correct.
How come?
I didn't generate a report after every visit. I continued to see him as much as possible and was not asked to generate another report.
Not asked by the defense to generate a report, correct?
Correct.
Now, you then see him after November 2013. You go and see him 9 months later on August the 5th, 2014, correct?
Correct.
And that is after Dr. William Reed has conducted some 15 plus hours of videotaped interviews with the defendant, correct?
I take your word for it. I don't,
Well, how about this? It was after, certainly after, Dr. Metzner called you and had a
Right.
conversation,
They
right?
called me on August 13.
And it was after Dr. Reed called you and had a conversation with you, correct?
Correct.
And then you went out and visited with the defendant in August 5th of 2014, correct?
Correct.
And you did not generate a report at that time either.
Correct.
But during that particular interview that is just notes, the defendant indicated to you that he had given some thought to fleeing, specifically driving to the airport or driving away, correct?
Yeah, that's the time on about the airport that you asked me before. Yes.
He also told you that at the time that he was planning this and purchasing the body armor, he did all that because, he bought the protective gear because he was concerned about the police shooting him, right?
Yes.
and he did not want to die. Correct? I think it's on page 5 of your notes, Doctor.
Let me turn to page 5, please.
Sure.
Can you please let me know, to just save time, where you
Sure.
are?
Sorry. I have...
Page 5?
Sorry. I have down that it's part of the notes that begin, possibility he might die when making plans, will get shot by police, got protective gear, didn't want to die.
Yes, in case he's shot.
Correct. Now on that next page at the top towards your notes, he tells you that he didn't consider that killing other people or wounding them will cause them pain.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
But he also told you, didn't he, that he took Vicodin an hour before he went to the theater, correct?
Yes.
Because he didn't want to experience pain as a result of police contact, correct?
Yes.
All right, now one of the things that you did finally in August of 2014 was to go over the defendant's jail writings. Do you see that in there? And it's on page 7, Doctor, about halfway down maybe?
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
That was important because those reflect writings that he made in jail while he was unmedicated, correct?
Correct.
And there's also the notebook, which reflected writings that he made when he was unmedicated, correct?
Correct.
Just before the shooting, right?
Yes.
And the jail writings took place just after the shooting, right?
Correct.
And the reason that's important is because one of the things you want to look at is if there's something called disorganized writing or disorganized thinking or something, right? Disorganized thoughts and speech.
Yes.
You would agree that disorganized thoughts and speech involve an inability to organize thoughts, connect them logically, and express them coherently, correct?
Yes.
In fact, that is the most prominent symptom of schizophrenia, in your opinion.
It's one of the prominent symptoms in chronic people with the advanced form of the disorder, not early in the course of schizophrenia, much less prominent.
And again, Doctor, I'm sorry, I'm going to read you this sentence. The disordered thoughts and speech that result are prominent symptoms of schizophrenia. Some would say the most prominent ones. Do you agree with that? And I can show you, it's out of your book.
They can be, yeah.
Okay. And that what it says is, the person may stop speaking abruptly in mid-thought, correct?
Yes.
Respond to questions with answers that are unrelated, correct?
Yes.
Make up unintelligible words, correct?
Correct.
And the person's speech may become so garbled that it's nearly incomprehensible to other people. You'd agree with that, right?
In extreme cases, yes.
Now, in looking at that notebook that the jury has all seen, you'd agree with me that that thing, without getting in the substance, is intentionally organized. Correct?
Within the delusional system, it is.
I understand what you're saying. I just am asking if you agree with me that the structure of the notebook is such that it is organized. You agree with that?
If you look, may I answer?
Yeah, I hope so. Yep. Please.
If you look at the organization of this book produced by a first-year graduate student at the university here, with an IQ of close to 130, I will say that this is not something that you expect from a person who does have capacity to express and to follow and comprehend what's surrounding him. So, these are the questions that this highly intelligent person is posing. What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of death? Next page.
Doctor.
Insight into
doctor.
the mind of madness.
Doctor.
This is
Doctor.
not organized.
Doctor.
Hold on. Doctor, you gotta wait for the question, okay? And you gotta answer the question. All right, ask your question.
Thank you. Doctor, we'll go through this, but we'll do it in response to questions, okay? Agreed?
Sure.
Okay, so on page 27, there's something that he captions, insights into the mind of madness, correct?
Yes.
And in that section, he goes through what appears to be his evaluation of the value of life, and, well, that's pretty much it, correct?
Yes.
All right, then on the next page, he goes into a discussion of justice, morality, death. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
Then he goes on to page 30 to alternatives to death, correct?
Yes.
And he numbers pretty clearly the alternatives to death. 1, 2, 3, 4, correct?
Correct.
And then he goes through a brief description that leads to the top of page 31, correct?
Correct.
And prior to page 31, other than his mathematical formula that he goes through with the people, well, in fact, the whole notebook, you'd agree with me, there are no grammatical errors in this notebook.
No grammar. Agree.
You would agree that with minor exception, every word is spelled correctly.
Correct.
Every word is legible, correct?
Yes.
There are no sentences that just stop or drop off, correct?
Correct.
Now, on page 31, he goes into a section called Self-Diagnosis of the Broken Mind, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, everything below there is an attempt by him to self-diagnose, correct? Bless you. Correct?
Yeah, a list of diagnoses.
That's right. And as you know from talking to him, that's a list of diagnoses he tried to research online.
Correct.
The next page is symptoms attributed to self-diagnosis. You see that?
Correct.
And he goes through, in perfect grammar and sentence structure, each of the different things that he thinks may exist for him and describes them in complete sentences. Fair?
Yes.
And he doesn't ever do that in a section separate from self-diagnosis of the broken mind. Correct?
Correct.
And he doesn't do it in any section separate from symptoms attributed to diagnosis, to self-diagnosis. Correct?
Overall, yes. There's some repetitions, but overall, yes.
Okay, and he does that for several pages, right?
Yes.
Then he draws a line when he's done talking about that subject, right?
Yes.
And he gets into the last escape, mass murder at the movies. Yes?
Yes.
He finishes up with a narrative as to why he is going to embrace the long-standing hatred of mankind, and at the end here, overcome all fear in certain death, and then he makes that symbol, correct?
Correct.
Then the next page is something he calls crazy concepts, right?
What page are you on? please?
37,
yes, yes.
ma'am?
37.
Yep.
Yes.
And you know from his conversations with other mental health providers that he didn't intend those to be crazy as insane concepts, just way out there concepts that he wanted to talk about. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, and under that, he lists with a word and a line things like futility, yes?
Yes.
And he then goes to Homo sapiens, correct?
Yes.
And he lays out the different views of Homo sapiens through mythical biblical, mythical Greek, and mythical German, correct?
Yes.
Then he moves on from that topic to something called nothing, right?
Yes.
And he gets philosophical there, correct?
Yes.
And then he continues this process throughout the next couple pages, including topics like everything, yes, on page
Yes.
39, bless you, the ripple butterfly effect, yes? And in fact, when he captions a paragraph or a section, all the writings that fall below it are related to just that topic, correct?
Yes.
Even on page, let's go 40 through 47. Those are all the pages where he writes the word why. Do you see that?
Yes.
Even in those pages, he writes from left to right, correct?
Yes.
On a line, correct?
Yes.
All the way across the page, yep.
Yeah.
And he does that for several pages, correct?
Yeah.
And in fact, towards the end here, he starts writing the word a little bit bigger, so he's writing less words per page, correct?
Yeah.
You never see him write why like in the margins or on the cover or just in a weird place anywhere else in that notebook, correct?
Correct.
Then he has a separate section called Case the Place. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And he goes through a rather detailed, and I'm going to use the word organized, analysis of targets. Do you see that?
Yes.
And he underlines the area that he wants to talk about, correct?
Yes.
And then he goes into a description weighing the pros and cons of each of those areas, yes?
Yes.
Then we get to, once he resolves, by the way, that he is going to do this at the Century 16 Theater, the next several pages involve him going through the theaters that provide the greatest opportunity for him to kill the most people.
Object to the form of the question. It began with once he resolves to do something. I don't think that's written in the notebook anywhere.
Sustained.
Doctor, you would agree with me that there is a portion of page 48 and 49 where it appears that he concludes, and I'll read it, what better place to case than that of an inconspicuous entertainment facility? Do you see that?
You're on page...
49, ma'am.
Okay. Yes.
And in fact, right above it, it identifies that facility as the Cinemark 16, correct?
Yes.
And it appears to you from everything else that follows that he has concluded that this is the place where he'll carry out this crime, correct?
Yes.
So the next several pages are him going through a rather detailed drawing of each of the theaters, followed by the pros and cons of why those theaters would or would not make a good place for him to kill, correct?
Yes.
And some of these cons are related to the fact that it would be too easy for people to flee, correct?
Yes.
And that is where he begins to get into the issue of buying handcuffs, right? Correct?
Yes.
And he assesses that he can use those handcuffs to lock the double doors to keep those people from getting away as he tried to kill them, correct?
Yes.
By the way, and I didn't ask you this back on that last part, but before you opined that he was insane and schizophrenic, did you have a conversation with him about why he bought 2 sets of handcuffs?
Yes.
Not in your report or your notes.
I know.
Is it? Okay. Then, once he does that, on page 52, he
Yeah.
does an analysis of, and spatially sets out where the National Guard is, where the Aurora Police Department is, and where the Cinemark 16 Theater is, correct?
Yes.
And he assesses in there that the ETA, which you understand to be estimated time of arrival, is 3 minutes for someone to come to help, correct?
Yes.
Then he draws a line under that, right?
Yes.
And he stops talking about the location where he's going to commit this crime. Fair?
Yes.
And he then gets into a discussion of something he calls the shrinks, correct?
Yes.
And he actually numbers in chronological order the shrinks that he has seen throughout his life, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So he puts down Mel, last name unknown, yes?
Yes.
Then it looks like he puts down number 2, Lynn Fenton, correct?
Yes.
But he goes back and realizes I should count Margaret Roth, right? Correct?
He lists Margaret.
Yeah, but it looks, he kind of does it inside a little into
1.5.
1.5. And what he's trying to do there, it looks like, is to make it in order of the people that he saw, correct?
Yes.
And then he goes to number 3, Robert Feinstein, right?
Correct.
Then he follows that up with numbered paragraphs that correspond with those people, describing his interactions with them, yes?
Yes.
and describing his interest in not building a false rapport with them, yes?
Judge, at this point, I'm going to object. The jury's seen the notebook. It's been published to them. They don't need this witness to just read the notebook. If he has questions about what her analysis of the notebook is, I have no objection to that.
The objection is overruled.
You'd agree with that, correct?
Yes,
And nowhere else, except in those numbered paragraphs corresponding to the numbered list, does he describe any of those individuals. Fair?
yes,
And then he goes all the way through to page 54. He finishes up with embrace the hatred, a dark night rises, and then he draws a line under that, correct?
yes,
And he uses that bottom space for some symbols or drawings, correct?
yes,
And then on page 55, he writes down faith underlined, correct?
yes,
And a question about faith, yes?
yes,
That includes the word murder, yes?
yes,
And then below that, he writes down the word reason, underlined, and then writes down a paragraph about reason, correct?
yes,
And nowhere does he just stop fully analyzing whatever section he just set up, correct?
yes.
Now, I want you to look at the jail writings that were admitted. And, Your Honor, I cannot remember the number of that defense exhibit.
Let's see.
And may I approach the
You may.
thing here?
It's D-TR-94. Thank you.
I do not have a copy with me of the jail writing.
I was worried about that. I think we just admitted it, Doctor, and I thought we were going to publish it. And now I don't know if it's up here. Oh, here we go. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
May.
I'm handing you what's been admitted as D-TR-94. Do you see that?
Yes,
Are those the jail writings?
yes,
Would you agree with me, Doctor, that those writings take place on lined notebook paper?
yes,
And would you agree with me that but for pictures or symbols that are drawn in that exhibit, all the words seem to flow left to right, correct?
yes,
On the lines, correct?
yes,
That punctuation is just as good as it was in the notebook,
yes,
that the handwriting is just as good as it was in the notebook,
yes,
that all the words are spelled just as good as it was in the notebook,
correct,
and that that set of jail writings is also broken down into sections. You'd agree?
yes,
And within those sections, the defendant writes only about those specific sections, correct?
yes,
Nowhere does he just sort of scrawl off into the margin some,
a little bit.
well, but it's part of that section, right? As he's drawing pictures about the game he's setting up, correct?
Yes,
Yes?
yes,
Yeah. And within the context of those jail writings, there are no incomplete sentences.
correct,
There are no made-up words, correct?
correct,
In fact, even in the notebook, I forgot to ask you this, no made-up words, right?
correct,
And part of those writings includes, I'm going off of memory here, at the end, he actually develops a game that he'd like to create, correct?
yes,
And he goes into details about the rules and how people will play, correct?
yes,
Earlier on, he talks about things for galactic colonization.
correct,
And you recall that he was reading books on galactic colonization while in jail,
yes,
and that this was a topic that he liked reading about in his free time.
yes,
Okay. There's something else too. You had talked before yesterday with Mr. King about the defendant but having avolition. Do you recall that?
correct,
I want to read to you your description of it from this book here. It refers to a pervasive lack of initiative and motivation. This is more than just your garden variety trouble getting started on a homework assignment or staying motivated to finish it. Instead, a person with schizophrenia may have trouble planning and finishing almost any task, from school to work to social activities, and includes even basic self-care activities such as eating and bathing. Correct? Do you agree that that is
I agree that this is the description of avolition.
Yep.
And when I might have to go over my words before, but what I described, I believe,
Yeah.
as most pertinent to Mr. Holmes is the flat affect, the restricted affective state he has been in, and not as much, and a little bit of the anhedonia toward the end, but not as much, alogia or avolition. Not every person, I describe negative symptoms and positive symptoms as a background for understanding schizophrenia. I did not say that he suffered from pervasive avolition as far as I remember.
Okay. But then you'd agree with me then that based on that description and what you've just said, he doesn't suffer from that.
At times, the psychotic process is a fluid process. And during this time, when it evolves and emerges, there might be times that there is some degree of symptoms, and these symptoms will not be present to the full extent or to the same degree the following day. That's why we go over it over time. Schizophrenia is not diagnosed at one point, in time after a 1-hour interview with a person.
You'd agree there's no evidence at any time prior to the shooting that the defendant had any issues with self-care, eating, bathing, nothing like that?
Correct.
And that there was nothing pervasive about any lack of initiative on the part of the defendant at any time prior to the shooting on July 2nd? You'd agree with that?
Correct.
There's something else, though, that's from this book that you wrote. And it says, schizophrenia is also associated with cognitive symptoms that involve deficits in thinking abilities, such as making decisions, paying attention, remembering, and then it goes on through some other stuff. You'd agree with that, right?
Yeah, I wrote it.
Okay. And it says examples of cognitive symptoms include problems with absorbing information, interpreting it, and making decisions based upon it. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
Paying attention and shifting focus when appropriate, correct?
Yes.
And keeping recently learned information in mind and using it right away, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree that the level of planning and detail that the defendant went through in first researching and learning about the explosives he would use in his apartment suggests he had the ability to go out with initiative, find this information, absorb it, and put it to use in his apartment. You'd agree with that?
Yes, and I will say within his delusional system.
I understand. You're going to want to add that in, and I'll ask you another question where you can add that in too.
Okay.
He also was able to learn about weapons, which he'd never handled before, correct?
Correct.
Figure out how to purchase them, right?
Yes.
How to find ammunition that would penetrate steel or even the seats in theaters, correct?
Yes.
And that he was able to find a place where he could go shoot at a range, correct?
Yes.
Undetected.
Yes.
And learn how to handle each of the weapons that he would ultimately use to try to kill people in the Century 16 theater.
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to get back to your interviews with the defendant. Now you have already told us you didn't write a report for August the 5th, 2014, despite all of this newly detailed or reported information, correct?
Yes.
In fact, it's in August of 2014 where you first document a conversation with the defendant about the apartment, yes?
The first document, yes.
Yeah. And the handcuffs, right?
Right.
And the selfies, correct?
Yes.
Then, you about 3+ months later, just 2 months before we start jury selection, you go and visit the defendant again, correct?
Yes.
And you sit down with him and have a conversation about certain things, right?
Yes.
This is the meeting at which, and I don't mean he was there, but this is the date at which you are finally able to sit down and have a conversation with his parents about their observations of their son.
Yes.
Yep. And his upbringing, correct?
Yes.
And the report that you generated for that ultimately wasn't until February 17th of 2015, some month or so into jury selection, correct?
Judge, object to the characterization that the report was for that The report was for all of the other visitations.
All right, the objection is overruled.
Doctor, based on that, though, I do want to rephrase my question, if the court will permit me.
Go
You,
ahead.
you did not write a report about your interview on November 18th, 2014, did you?
One second.
Yep.
Yeah, this is inadvertently the date, the report, the notes that I did not incorporate in my report. Right.
Right.
I did not note that I've incorporated them, but I did. I
Right.
did not note, in the first part I've conducted the additional interview with Mr. Holmes I did not note 11/18/13, but started with 8/5/2014.
Fair to say the report that we're talking about is about a 3.5-page report you generated on February 17th of this year?
Yeah, it's an update, labeled Update Neuropsychiatric Evaluation Report.
And to be fair, too, that update does not include any of the specific information you obtained from November 2013, August 2014, or November 2014. Fair?
It relies on that and all of the information that I've done and I've outlined that I've gone over, but it is a brief summary.
I understand. On page 6 of your notes from November of 2014, one of the things that the defendant tells you is that he tells you that he told Dr. Fenton that he believed killing people would increase his self-worth. You see that? Your notes, page 6?
Can you repeat? Is this from my notes?
Yes, ma'am.
Of November 2014?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
doctor. Page 6, top, sort of.
Can you point me to where in that? I believe it's there, if you
Yeah,
say so, but
It's a quote that says, "I told Fenton that killing people will increase my self-worth." You see that?
yeah,
Okay, you see that, right?
yeah, I see that.
That's what he tells you in November of just last year, right?
Correct.
Now, you've had a chance to review all of the reports and the notes from Doctors Fenton and Feinstein, correct?
Yes,
And you know that that doesn't appear in there anywhere, right?
correct.
And also, that statement that he said he told Dr. Fenton that is not consistent with any other statement he's given to any other mental health provider that you're aware of, correct?
Correct.
And it's not consistent either with his stated purpose to everyone, including you, that he wanted to withhold information from them out of fear that they might stop him or lock him up, correct?
Objection to the characterization that he made that statement to everyone.
Overruled.
Go ahead, doctor.
So can you repeat, please?
Yeah. That statement is not consistent with any of the other descriptions of his interactions with Doctors Fenton and Feinstein to any other mental health provider, correct?
I do not remember if he said the same thing that he said to me to other mental health providers, but he did say that to me.
Okay. He also tells you on page 8 of your notes, he also describes himself to you in November of 2014 as rationally insane. Correct?
The words are familiar. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that's how he described himself
Yeah.
in November of last year.
It's a quote.
Yeah. And you're aware that he, from the information that was provided here, he actually tried to create a website called Rational Insanity. You aware of that?
Yeah, I don't remember the wording of that.
Okay.
I don't.
You then, 2 lines below that, discuss with him, it looks like it must be the shadows. It doesn't say that, but you said juggling balls or head.
Correct. The shadows.
Yep. And then, right below that, he says that he goes into this description, cloudy shadows, once in a while, a small person or persons juggling balls. You see that?
Yes, this was something that I noted, I think, yesterday, that I went over the same things repeatedly, and that whereas before he did not provide information, did not elaborate, with time he elaborated more with more probing about what are the shadows, describe them more, and it also more specific that it was doing a third lab rotation.
Understood. And so then on page 9, you ask him again about this end of the world stuff, and he says, boy, I just don't remember.
Where is that?
Right above carrying it out, which is underlined.
End of world, don't remember.
Yeah, it says
No,
doesn't remember.
If you look at the line, 2 lines before, were discussing, will it be an apocalyptic event, not bi-apocalyptic event, to which I responded before when I called it catastrophe. You'll die, it's just death.
But he tells you this in November of 2014.
Correct.
Okay. Then when he talks about, right below carrying it out, he says that in part the movie theater was picked because it was impersonal and there was a high chance of shooting people, correct?
Yeah, right after that, yeah.
Yeah. And doesn't say killing people, just shooting people, right?
Correct.
All right. And then on page 10, you do ask him in November of 2014, or you document that you ask him about the selfie. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And he says to be remembered by whoever views it, correct?
Yes. And the next 3 words say, don't know why. I probed.
Don't know why he wanted to be remembered?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you if you'd agree with some things here that I'm going to ask you about based on your understanding of the facts of the case so far and
Yes.
the conversations you've had with the defendant. This process, this planning that took place over 2.5 months, you would not describe the defendant's efforts as one that was committed in a hasty or impulsive manner.
Objection invades the province of the jury.
Overruled.
Go ahead. Correct?
In a compelled manner, not impulsive. He was planning it as documented.
Sure. You believe that he had the capacity to form the conscious objective to kill people.
I believe
It
that
invades the province of the jury.
Capacity? No, overruled.
Go ahead.
I believe that within his pervasive delusional system, all the steps, everything that we have gone through in the galactic colonization and in the notebook are part of his delusional system, and delusional people of high intelligence do have the ability, unfortunately, to plan and execute what is consistent with their delusional beliefs. And that's the essence of his psychosis.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not asking you about the delusion. I'm asking you if you believe, if you would agree, that he had the capacity to form a conscious objective to kill people. And we've been talking about it all day.
Yeah, he had the capacity, and I say within his delusions.
And that he was aware, he had the capacity to be aware that the conduct that he was engaging in would practically certainly kill people.
Judge, this invades the province of the jury.
No, it does not. Overruled. He's asking about capacity. This is precisely what she's opining on.
Go ahead,
Overruled.
doctor.
So how do you define capacity? What do you mean? Did he have the ability to order on the computer and to produce all of this? Yes, but it was within a distorted, perception of reality within his delusions. He had the capacity to pursue and follow his delusions. Yes, it has, but at times, if just put just the word capacity, it's like talking about our capacity to sit here and listen and see and write. It's related within the delusion. He had the capacity, and I do not want, and I elaborate because I do not believe that the information that we have reviewed, the lines and the numbering are meaningful without considering his delusion. A healthy person does not, you have to look at the content of what is there.
Doctor.
So when you say capacity, it assumes that this person, this is totally rational to produce this type of information. And I don't think it is.
Thank you, Doctor, for that. The question I'm asking you, though, is, and we've gone over all of his statements to you about why he wanted to do what he wanted to do, was that you would agree that he has, let's use the word ability.
Ability.
He had the ability to be aware that the conduct he was engaging in was practically certain to lead to the death of others. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And that he was aware that what he was engaging in, he had the ability to be aware that what he was engaging in created a grave risk of death to others, not himself. Correct?
Judge, this is outside the scope. This is an aggravator.
Would counsel please approach? objection is overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Brockler.
Can I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
I want to go through with you, if I could, Doctor, just a few things. Well, it's a list of things to get through here. And Doctor, I'm sorry about that. I just want to make sure I ask you, you believe that the defendant had the capacity to knowingly engage in conduct that created a grave risk of death to a person or persons other than himself? Correct?
Can you repeat it again?
Yep. That he had the capacity to knowingly engage in conduct that created a grave risk of death to a person other than himself. Like the people he shot. Correct?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holmes, you would agree, appreciated that what he was planning and what he pulled off was against the law. You'd agree with that?
Yes,
And you'd agree that the law, although not in its entirety, is one measure of what society thinks about certain conduct, correct?
yes,
You would recall that the defendant told Dr. Metzner that he knew that killing people was against the law, yeah?
yes,
You also recognize that he said to Dr. Reed, quote, well, I knew that it, meaning the shooting mission, was legally wrong because you get punished for killing people. You recall that?
yes,
And that he told Dr. Reed that he believed the shooting, that after the shooting, he would go to jail or he would die, just like he told you. Correct?
yes,
That in his instant messaging with Gargi Dada on March 25th, 2012, he referred to this interest in shooting people as doing something evil. Correct?
yes,
That he also, in that same G-chat with Gargi Dada, said that there's no way to do it, and that's killing people, without getting caught. Correct?
yes,
We've already gone through the will you visit me in prison quote, correct?
yes,
You also will recall that in his July 8th, just 12 days before the shooting, really 11 before he sets up his apartment with bombs, he texts Hillary Allen and tells her, in essence, stay away from him, right?
yes,
And you agree that the reason he does that is because, and this is what he told Dr. Reed, I didn't want to hurt her by putting her in jeopardy, being like the girlfriend to a murderer. Do you recall that?
yes,
And the other thing that he ended up saying was he didn't want her to have to endure all of the negative media that would surround what he was going to do, correct?
yes,
That he refused to go into details, bless you, as to the precise nature of his thoughts or his plans with Drs. Fenton and Feinstein because he thought doing so would result in him getting locked up.
yes,
That, bless you, that when Dr. Metzner asked him why he had not previously killed people, given this long-term, more than 10 years obsession to kill, you'd agree with that,
yes,
that he said because of fear of consequences, jail, prison, death penalty, all that stuff, right?
yes,
That when he was confronted by police officers, he put up his hands, quote, to avoid being shot by the police, right?
yes,
You agree that he took extraordinary steps to avoid being detected. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. And not just in the execution. I mean in the absolute planning of this, correct?
Yes.
He, you remember that he said that he made purchases from multiple different stores and through different means, in person and on the internet, to avoid suspicion.
Yes.
That in order to combat the possibility that anyone would see what he was doing in his apartment, he closed his blinds.
Yes.
That he anticipated the police trying to stop him using lethal force from what he was doing and purchased protective equipment to keep him from getting harmed.
Yes.
So that's an answer.
Overruled.
That he attempted to divert emergency response teams and police to his apartment so that he could continue to kill people in that theater.
Yes.
That he, in setting up his apartment, by the way, he chose real gasoline, yes?
Yes.
Real potassium permanganate,
Yes.
real glycerin,
Yes.
that he used real magnesium.
Yes.
Do you know what the magnesium's for?
I don't remember what he said about that.
Do you know what happens to magnesium when it burns?
It explodes.
Well, did he
Can
tell you
explode.
why he chose magnesium?
I don't remember what he said.
Do you, and maybe this will help you remember that once magnesium catches on fire, putting water on it only makes it burn even more, correct?
Yes.
And that it creates, in some cases, a magnesium-based gas, correct?
Yes.
That his carpet was saturated in real gas, correct?
Yes.
That he used real fuses, yes?
Yes.
Real black gunpowder, correct? Real bullets,
Yes.
that he made his own thermite,
Yes.
and the way he had to make thermite was he actually had to make his own rust to begin with, correct?
Yes.
And that the purpose of the thermite was to ignite and burn down into those jars and set off napalm
Yes.
that he made,
Yes.
causing his apartment to explode,
Yes.
and that he had two separate methods of detonation for it, correct?
Yes.
That when he spoke with Dr. Reed about his use of the term evil in the G-chat with Miss Dada on the 25th, he told Dr. Reed that killing people is considered evil by everyone. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That Dr. Reed asked Mr. Holmes what is morally evil, and he replied something that's against the law, and if you do it, then it's morally evil. You recall that?
Yes.
That in the context of killing people that's evil, beyond just being in violation of the law, you'll recall that Mr. Holmes said, quote, if the other person doesn't want to die, that is evil, if you're going against somebody's wishes. You agree with that?
Yes.
That he also told Dr. Reed that he believed that the victims did not want to be shot. You recall that?
Yes.
And in fact, he told Dr. Woodcock, as we discussed yesterday, he would not have had what he did happen to him. Correct?
Yes.
And that in fact he himself took extraordinary steps not only to not suffer pain, but to survive any confrontation with the law enforcement officers.
Took
Correct?
Extraordinary steps, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Ma'am, let me ask you this. Do you think armoring yourself from head to toe, not a single millimeter of flesh exposed to the outside world, is an extraordinary step to protect yourself from the use of lethal force?
Objected, not a single millimeter of flesh exposed.
Overruled.
Go ahead. Would you think that would be an extraordinary step to take?
I'm not sure if extraordinary, but it will be a step that he has taken to protect himself.
Mr. Bruckler, how much longer do you think you have?
2 days. I'm kidding, Judge. I'm joking. And that's not even a funny joke anymore. Judge, I would I would guess, this pace is great, 20 minutes.
All right, then I think in that case, we'll probably quit for the day. and then we'll pick up tomorrow, okay? All right, members of the jury, please make sure you follow all my admonishments overnight, and I'll see you back here at the usual time, 8:40 tomorrow morning. Oh, before you leave, I had deferred ruling on Exhibit D-TR-97, which is a video recording, and I have sustained the objection, so that exhibit was not admitted. All right, have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Hey, you gotta remind me to move to admit these tomorrow. We're gonna do it right now, or do I have to do it after?
The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. Everyone may be seated, and doctor, you're free to go. Your subpoena is continued until tomorrow, okay? Thank you. All right, first I have Exhibit D-TR-97. I don't think we need to mark it as a court trial exhibit because we already have two versions of this particular video recording marked as, I believe it's C-TR-78 and C-TR-79. 78 has subheadings or titles, or excuse me, text. 79 does not. And D-TR-97 does not. So the its counterpart really would be C-TR-79. So I'll return it to the defense whenever you want to pick it up. I'll leave it right here. Secondly, in terms of scheduling, it's looking like we're not going to make it by Monday in terms of having closing arguments that day. Mr. Brockler is indicating he still needs about 20 minutes, which in lawyers' lingo means probably 30 to 40 minutes. And then Mr. King, I don't know how long do you think you'll have on redirect? I mean, I don't need you to give me a specific estimate. I'm just trying to gauge, are we talking about a half a day? Are we talking about an hour, or something closer to an hour, or something closer to a half a day?
I would say 2 or 3 hours, maybe 2 hours.
Okay, so, and then Mr. Brockler may have some recross after that, so that'll take us most of the day tomorrow. The defense still has about 5 hours, I think, of video recording to play, and I don't know if you have any other witnesses. Do you, other than potentially the defendant testifying, at this time, do you know whether you're going to call any other witnesses?
Potentially one more, Your Honor.
Okay, is that Dr. Gray?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so there's a potential for one more witness. So I think it would take us probably through tomorrow, and then if we finish early tomorrow, then we could use the time to finish the Curtis advisement and perhaps to talk about instructions. And then do the people still think that they can do the rebuttal case in one day?
I think so, Your Honor. We'll know more after that.
So tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That would be great, because I don't want to schedule closings for Tuesday only to bump him again. So if you would let me know tomorrow how long you think your rebuttal is likely to take, then that would be helpful. If you're confident that your rebuttal case can be completed in one day, then we can set Friday for that. Otherwise, and part of Friday and part of Monday, I should say, actually. So, and then we could have closings on Tuesday.
Pretty confident, Your Honor.
In one day? All right. I think what's likely to happen is if Dr. Gurr takes half a day tomorrow, or perhaps even more, the defense will need part of Friday to finish its case. I'm assuming that they'll be able to finish it on Friday, And then if we finish early on Friday, I think I said Thursday before, if we finish early on Friday, then we could use the time to complete the Curtis advisement, finish any discussion about, or pretty much finish any discussion about jury instructions, and then have the prosecution do its rebuttal case on Monday with closing arguments then scheduled for Tuesday. So that only works if you tell me tomorrow that you think you can do your rebuttal case in one day.
We'll tell you tomorrow, Your Honor, for sure.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll just play it by ear, okay? All right, is there anything else at this time on behalf of either party?
No, Your Honor.
No, Ms. Brady's raising her hand from way in the back. Ms. Brady. By the way, before I forget, have we talked about how many attorneys are going to do closing arguments per side yet? Have the people decided that yet? Has the defense decided that yet?
Your Honor, we're going to have one.
For both closing and rebuttal close?
Yes, sir.
All right, what about the defense? You going to have one as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, and do you need any warnings? And time warnings, I mean.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like, if the court would permit, two, one at 1:15 and one at 1:30.
Okay, so 1:15 and 1:30, are you anticipating the one at 1:15 will be during your initial closing argument?
I do, Your Honor. I'm trying to figure out a way to save myself approximately 30 to 45 minutes for the rebuttal. Oh, and then, Your Honor, for that rebuttal close, maybe one at 5 minutes till.
Okay, Mr. King, do you know yet?
Can I let you know a little later?
That's fine.
Thank you.
That's okay. I'll tell you the same thing I said before openings, and that is that I think it makes sense for you to exchange demonstrative exhibits that you intend to use, or any exhibits you intend to use, but I'm not going to require it. That's up to you. I think it saves time. Obviously, if there are admitted exhibits, I don't think you need to let the other side know because they've been admitted. But in terms of demonstrative exhibits, I think it's helpful if you show those exhibits to each other and have that conversation ahead of time. But I won't require it, just as I did not require it before openings. I thought openings went pretty smoothly, in part because you had conferred with each other, but I'll leave it to you. I think there tends to be more interruptions when counsel do not confer, but I'll let you decide how to proceed, okay?
I have one other thing, Your Honor. We've been exchanging on a weekly basis the witness list. We exchanged our witness list with them last Friday evening, and given that all of our witnesses have now been disclosed, I'd ask for a good faith list of potential, non-binding list of potential witnesses for rebuttal from the prosecution, just so we're not caught out unawares.
All right. Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask one other thing about the openings, Judge? And I know the court has, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I just shuddered thinking about redoing this. Specifically, I know the court had gone through sort of how it wanted to lay out the day in terms of the closings. And respectfully, I'd ask if the court would consider doing it in the manner in which it did the openings, which had the same time hacks associated with it. And the court will recall that we did it all in the afternoon. And my respectful suggestion is, could we offer the jurors the opportunity to have an earlier lunch, come back at noon or noon 30, go through the instructions, and then allow each side the 2 hours with the normal afternoon break after the prosecution's opening close, and then complete the rest of it, and we'd be done by approximately 5 or 5:30. As opposed to, I think initially the court had thought, have the prosecution go in the morning, do the normal hour-and-a-half lunch, and then bring back and come back and finish up.
I think I thought about that. I think it would be an ambitious plan because of the breaks we have to take and how long I've given you. I think it worked for openings, but I think we went late. But I'm open to that. Is the defense, does the defense have a preference between the two?
I would prefer the way that the court set it out. I think that's we're asking for trouble, that we're not going to finish in one day then. I mean, when the court says that would be ambitious, I agree with the court.
Yeah, we would have to start no later than probably 11:30 to make it work. I'll think about it. I'm not sure that that's the best way to proceed, but I'll think about it. I'll give it some thought. All right, Ms. Brady?
It's just a handful of exhibits that were dated on the stand, and we're just wondering if we could get a copy of those.
Yes, would you give those to my staff, please? I'll make sure they copy them for you.
Courtesy copy as well. That, we
Sure.
appreciate that.
You bet. Yep. Ms. Nelson.
Just one other thing. I just wanted to remind the court that I do have a supplemental argument and authority I'd like to make regarding the issue of opening statement at penalty. I certainly don't need to do that now. Maybe at the same time we talk about instructions or something. I'd like to do it at some point, maybe this week, but
Fine.
I just wanted to
Why
remind
don't
the
you
court.
remind me, why don't you remind me when we talk about the courtesy advisement and the instructions, to talk about that as well, please. And are you folks okay with me completing the courtesy advisement, sort of when we're thinking you're going to be finishing your evidence?
Yes, Your Honor, if you can just give us a heads up when you're thinking about doing that.
Okay.
I mean, when we get closer, perhaps, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it depends if Dr. Gurr is your last witness and then you have the video recordings, we could do it either after the video recordings are done or as the video recordings maybe have played in part and maybe the jury goes home a little early, we could do it either way, but it would be around that time. If you call Dr. Gray, then we probably would wait until after his testimony. But my preference would be to either do it sort of at the end of all your evidence having been presented, or as all the evidence except the videos have been published. Does that make sense?
It does, Your Honor, and we don't need a big heads up, just enough time to be able to discuss the matter with Mr. Holmes, so it doesn't come as a surprise.
Okay. Ms. Stitch McGuire, people keep getting up.
I apologize, Your Honor.
All right.
As the court ponders what to do for closing arguments, I was wondering if the court could also entertain how many breaks the court thinks the court might take in between each type of closing argument. For instance, if the court would take a break after the prosecution's initial close, also after then the defense's close, and then also after, well, rebuttal, I guess we're done. But the reason for that, Your Honor, is that there aren't enough seats in the courtroom, as the court knows, for all the victims who want to be here. So I'm trying to figure out how many sets of rotation of victims I can get in to decide who I give the seats to. Thanks.
All right, and we'll have overflow rooms available. Obviously, it's not quite the same, but they'll be available. But I think what I said the other day, and what I still think makes sense, is to have us take a break after I go through the instructions and verdict forms. Then take another break after the prosecution's opening closing argument. Then take another break after the defense's closing. And then, at the end of that would be when the prosecution finishes rebuttal closing. So multiple breaks throughout. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow. The court will be in recess.